can begin to be identified between the preschool and primary levels. And it's not that you may necessarily want to separate them into this merit-based system then, but you begin to harness that creativity. So we need to talk about an educational system that's about allowing people to develop their artistic talents, to value an artist, or to encourage kids that it's okay to want to be an actor or an actress. And I think once we allow people to develop and have that sense of identity, then we're better off, and even for a plan. And we must be careful, though, that we don't force kids into a certain bracket at the same time. You know, we realize that in a plan we'll need 1,500 nurses, but how are we going to fund this? And so we now need to look even at a possible education tax. I know in Jamaica, for example, they have an educational tax system that allows everyone to go to school for basically free.
But you know, if we stop funding these money-losing corporations, that we every year allocate 50 to 60 million dollars, I can assure you, we will have more than sufficient.
Can I talk to this really quickly? I am all for the privatization of our public corporations because I think you can, as Mr. Ferguson alluded to earlier, put people who are better capable of running them in charge of them, and they'll end up turning a profit, much more likely to do so than they do currently. But what I want to say, and Ms. Hyler touched on a very important point, that is, it really hurts me when our government invests money in the youth. And we have scholarship, and I shouldn't have stopped there. It bothers me when our government invests money in the youth, but the youth choose not to return to this country to make their contribution. You can have all of the scholarship programs that are government funded that you want with the hopes of developing this great country, but if they go and in turn choose to leave this country for the United States or elsewhere because they're not as patriotic about it, that's not money well spent.
I don't think it's a question of patriotism for a lot of them. I think they come back home, they 6, 7 months, they're looking for a job. They're trained to be a physicist, or they're trained to be, they're trained in finance, or they come back with an MBA, and the only thing they can find is a teller position or
but then,
somewhere, whatever.
And so, the point that Mr. Ferguson made, and that is, you have a policy or a plan to say this is how many of these we need.
Yes, you have that, but when you come to hiring in the private sector,
if we have the entrepreneurial spirit, we will have the new Silicon. It wouldn't be Silicon Valley. It will be NASA Valley. You'll have Andros Valley. You have those things.
I understand.
On this note, if I can,
but we're losing a lot of the most educated people in this country. A lot of them are not here.
You see, this is my thing, and when we're talking about this plan, we need to take all this into consideration. You said something, and this is why I'm saying we can't limit people and say we only need nurses, so you can't become a physicist, And if we have a plan, like he's saying, we'll be able to develop people for that. What we need to do, however, is to ensure that when they come here, we don't allow a foreigner to be placed higher than them and paid higher than them because they're not valued as a Bahamian. And that is what we need to do if we want to stop this brain drain. Too often, people come home, besides the fact that they can't find jobs, when they find them, you put someone over them that's not even from here, and they're not valued. Why am I going to come and work in my own country where I can't be valued and I can work in someone else's country and make more? But also, if we have this plan where we educate young people from very young ages to have a sense of national pride and identity, if that is built into you through an educational component, you find less people wanting to go off. Because I have a sense of I'm belonging to this country. In 20 years, I own this country. This is my country. I can come here and do what I want and contribute to this country.
Two things, right? You said, you mentioned a radical idea. When I went to school in Crooked Island, right? We got off at 3, right? We had like a half an hour break, and then we went back in the classroom from 4:30 and to 6:30 and sometimes 7 o'clock. And then some days we had an hour break and we went from 4 to 8, right? So it's nothing revolutionary. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But it's just we need someone who have the wherewithal, the authority to implement it. It's very easy to do. Now back to the having someone qualified come here and you put someone over. I mean, the reality is this. If you have a business, you're going to put your guy in charge. That's the reality, right? And the track record for most Bahamians has not been good. When they make it to the top, by and large, they start to come to work at 10, they leave at 3, and that's it. When you go, the higher up you go, you come in at 6 and you leave at 7. The problem is once Bahamians get in charge of a foreign entity, by and large, they tend to cut the hours and they're not focused, right?
Something happens.
Something happens, but the thing is this, right? If we go back to the entrepreneurial spirit, if you have Bahamians creating new businesses, etc., we will have enough jobs available. I mean, Dr. Rollins, he started his own practice. I can tell you, he don't show up at 10 and leave at 3 every day. If he does, you know something, he wouldn't be able to pay the light bill at the end of the month.
Doc, you come in about 2, right?
I don't come in at 7:30.
And I agree. I mean, when someone invests a lot of money in a country, they want their person at the helm, and you can understand that. But I think what we're talking about is those persons who come in at the middle levels. And there are quite a few people where our immigration policies are failing us, where they're coming at the middle level. You're doing the same job as they are. They're getting paid more than you. They're also getting housing, they're getting car allowance, they're getting all of that. And so I think our immigration policy has to be looked at. The policy is there, but are we carrying it out? That's the question.
Mr. Ferguson has said something extremely bold today, something that no politician in this country would ever dare say, and that is that something happens to Bahamians when they climb the ladder of corporate success. If you have someone who can capture the ears and the attention of the Bahamian people to say something so controversial, you know what it does? It gives people reason to start discussing it and to say, you know what, this is not true. And they prove whether it's true or not based on how they respond. I think that if that is true, obviously that is no way for us as a country to be able to develop, at least not if we have a plan that is going to place Bahamians first. So what it means then is that we have to look at that a little more closely and put in place a system where there are checks and balances, because if that's going to be the way Bahamians approach their responsibilities as employees, then definitely there is reason to say that you can understand why they would want to bring in persons other than Bahamians to work.
And I want to make it clear, I'm sure everybody understands here that sometimes, foreign help is needed. We don't want to suggest the idea that nothing foreign, that whole thing. I just want to touch on something before we run out of time for this section. Should we, Mr. Simon, change our methodology of instruction such that it is more flexible and inclusive of technology, and in particular, the movement and vibrance of technology? And I don't mean let's buy them some computer. I don't mean that. I'm talking about the use of computers and all this other wonderful technology to make this mind a sharper tool. Should we not do this, and how can it happen again in this situation?
Quite easily. There's an old quote that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And a part of that preparation of